LLC versus S-Corp. What is the difference and can it save me a ton of money in taxes? What's up guys, I'm Prince Donnell, founder of Jumping Jack Tax Franchise. Appreciate you for watching this video. First and foremost, before I even get into any of this, shout out to all of our newest subscribers. I think we're about to hit 40,000 subscribers as of today, of people that have joined our family, and I appreciate you. Thank you for liking, thank you for commenting. Thank y'all for inserting so many questions that I can make videos about. And I thank you for being a part of the family. So please like, comment, and subscribe to this video if I provide you with a ton of value here. This isn't even going to be a long video today, because I'm just going to be breaking down the facts. And the reason why I thought it was important to make this video today is because I've been getting a ton of direct messages like, Don, create a video about LLC versus S-Corp. Please, I heard it saves a ton of money in taxes. I'm about to switch over to an S-Corp. I even saw comments on my YouTube page like, nah, Don, don't do an LLC. You need to move to S-Corp. And it sounds great in theory, but here's the thing. And this is rule number one of entrepreneurship. And y'all know I like to give a lot of lessons on entrepreneurship as I'm going through the video and talking about the facts. Number one, if you're a new entrepreneur that's watching this video right now, please, I am begging you, do not just do things without understanding the knowledge behind what you're doing, or not hiring professionals that are going to be educating you on this process. Let me also state a disclaimer for you. I am not a CPA, I am not an attorney. Although I have a tax franchise, I still have a CPA that I have hired that handles my taxes, and I still have attorneys that handle all of my legal things that I have to take care of for my business. Why? Because that's what a smart entrepreneur does, because you don't know everything. So please do not just scroll on social media and because everybody says move to S-Corp, because this theory went around, or you're looking through my comments and you got this message from somebody who is like, hey, move to S-Corp, and you like, hey, I'm just going to do it. No. Please get the knowledge first. That's what makes you a great entrepreneur. And I'll disclaim this before I keep moving forward about LLC versus S-Corp. Having an S-Corp is a different type of beast, okay? There's a lot of different maintenance, hiring attorneys, having CPAs, payroll, all the things that I'm going to get into in a second, that if you're new here as an entrepreneur, or if you haven't even made a certain amount of profit, then an S-Corp might not even be for you. Right? You can still watch this video because it's going to give you the knowledge for the future, but it may not be for you as of right now. An LLC is perfectly fine for you if you're just starting out and you may not be making enough in net profit, or you can't handle all the maintenance and things that are required of an S-Corp. That's fine. Guess what? When I first started my business 5 years ago, I started out as a sole proprietor, right? And then as a literally sole proprietor, business was directly in my name. Like I had no legal protection, nothing, just me as a sole proprietor. And then I moved up and said, oh, you know what? Somebody told me I need to get an LLC for asset protection to be able to shield my business from my personal assets. So let me go ahead and move into an LLC. And I gradually moved up to LLC. And then once net profit came in, I moved over to S-Corp. So understand that this is a journey. This is not something that you have to do overnight. This is not something that you got to keep figuring out. All I want you to figure out right now, right? If you're new as an entrepreneur and you're not making much profit, all I want you to figure out right now is how to get your business to start getting sales, right? That's what I want you to figure out. How can I get sales? How can I worry about my marketing, right? That's the main things you need to worry about here. Now, for my entrepreneurs that are starting to generate some net profit, right? You are getting customers, right? Now we have to start talking about exposure, okay? The reason why I talk about exposure is because the more customers you get, the more money you make, exposures come. Exposures come from a legal side. Exposures come from a tax side. And that's where now you have to worry about these issues on how to save money on taxes, on how to protect your personal assets. That's where that conversation starts to come into play. And this is where we now start talking about LLC versus S-Corp, okay? So that's very important. Now, I would suggest, if you're watching this video, definitely make sure you have an LLC, because I would always advocate for that. You want to be able to have some type of legal protection in place to protect your personal assets if you're dealing with customers, right? That's the main, simplest thing you can do from here. But now that we're going to be going into this video, let's talk about LLC versus S-Corp. And before I do that, let me just break down the science of an LLC for those who are new entrepreneurs here, right? So that you understand how this works, because I did see a couple myths about an LLC, because like I'm on Instagram and like I see everybody talking about get an LLC, it saves you a ton of money on taxes. Well, that may not necessarily be the case here, and we have to iron out some things so you understand what you're doing, okay? But again, like I said, before I move forward, always make sure you have a professional, whether it be a CPA or tax professional and an attorney that's in place to make sure that they're overviewing and looking through these things. I will advocate for that any day of the week, okay? Especially if that's not your specialty. Your specialty is an entrepreneur, not being a legal expert, okay? Not being a tax expert. Your job is to make money. Your job is to focus on marketing and servicing your customers, okay? So, first things first, if you are an LLC owner right now, which odds are if you're watching this video, that's the case. As an LLC is a legal structure for operations and for asset protection. That's what an LLC is, a limited liability company, okay? That's all it's for, a legal structure for operations and asset protection, okay? That's the simple concept. How is an LLC taxed? An LLC is taxed as a sole proprietor, a partnership, or an S-Corp, okay? So a lot of people say, hey, well, I'm taxed as an LLC. Well, that's impossible. You can't be taxed as an LLC. There's no such thing as being taxed as an LLC. The IRS only recognizes a few things. They only recognize sole proprietors, or they only recognize sole proprietors, partnerships, or S-Corps. I was going to say a disregarded entity. It slipped my mind, right? Disregarded entity, partnership, or an S-Corp. They don't recognize an LLC because an LLC is a legal structure. It's not how you're taxed. Okay, so you're not taxed as an LLC. Okay, so these are the only ways that you're taxed here. Okay, now mostly I would assume if you're watching this video that you're probably being taxed as a sole proprietor or as a partnership as of right now. If you just started your LLC and you're new to this, I'm talking to new people here. You're most likely being taxed as a sole proprietor or a partnership if you actually have a partner on your LLC, right? If that's the case, let's talk about the tax myth here. The tax myth is that my LLC saves me so much money on taxes. Again, an LLC does not save you any money on taxes. It does not save you any money on taxes unless you elect to be taxed as an S-Corp, which we'll talk about later on in this video. If you're not electing to be taxed as an S-Corp, you're not saving any money on taxes, okay? All you're doing is creating a level of asset protection and allowing the business to operate more smoothly with an LLC. And I'll break down why. Let's get into the science of this here, okay? And I gave an example so that we have a full understanding because I love numbers. And this example is a real life example. Like for me, these numbers may not be actually my numbers, but I'm going to take y'all through a journey because I love learning these things through actual numbers so you have an idea and an understanding of how this works as well, okay? So let's give an example of why an LLC does not save you any money on taxes and why you have to elect to be taxed as an S-Corp and when to do that. First things first, as an example, let's say that I just started a business, Prince Donnell LLC. Hooray, I just became an entrepreneur. Congratulations. If that's you, congratulations to you on starting your business. And you went ahead and got your LLC because you got smart. You want to make sure you're legally protected, all of that good stuff. Amazing job. Shout out to you, right? I started Prince Donnell LLC. My focus is on marketing. My focus is on YouTube and TikTok. And I get paid from the YouTube ads. I get paid from TikTok. I get paid from sponsorships. I get paid from people wanting me to market their products and services. And they all pay my LLC. That's great, right? Boom. I'm making some money here. That's the most important piece. I'm making money because none of this tax stuff matters if you're taking a loss or you ain't even making no money at all, right? The goal of a business is to make money, okay? Now, I'm making money. At the end of my year, I just made $150,000 in revenue. Mind you, I did not say net, I mean revenue. Like total amount of money that came to Prince Donnell LLC is 150 grand. That wasn't a bad year. I mean, jeez, I made 6 figures in that year. If it was my first year in business, man, you're high flying. A lot of businesses don't make 150,000 in their first year. So that's huge. Even if you made any type of revenue in your first year, congratulations to you, because we understand how hard it is to go into business. Any type of revenue, you should be proud of yourself for that. But as this example, I pulled off $150,000 in revenue. Great. Let's say my expenses now are $50,000. My expenses from the cameras I had to buy, from the lights, to the studio equipment, to me having to travel places and all these other things I had to do in order to facilitate the marketing to YouTube, to TikTok, and etc. Right? It cost me $50,000 in expenses, which means that out of my $150,000, spent 50. Now that means that I'm netting about 100,000, right? I'm netting 100 grand here. That's my take home, okay? Now that I'm netting $100,000 here, now let's talk about the tax side. And by the way, this is a simple example. Again, simple. There's more variables that go into this. And that's why you want to talk to a CPA or a tax professional or an attorney, because I'm not going to go into every variable here. I'm only going to state the simpleness of it so you understand how this works, okay? Now, I'm netting 100K. Now that I'm netting 100K, guess who now wants their money? Right? Uncle Sam. He's like, hey, I need my cut before you keep whatever's left. So now Uncle Sam comes into play, right? Now that Uncle Sam is here, the first thing that you have to pay when you have your LLC and you're taxed as a sole proprietor, right? The first thing you're going to pay is self-employment tax. Now, let's break down self-employment tax. Now, normally, if you just transitioned over from working at a job and then you moved over into a business, you probably saw that F word, that FICA, right? You saw it on your paycheck, right? Every time you got your check from your employer. Now, normally when you were working at a job, normally that FICA tax is split in half, right? So you pay half of the FICA tax, I believe 7.6%, and then the employer pays the other 7.6%. And from there, now you pay half, the employer pays half. But guess what? Since you're a sole proprietor and you're taking on the entire business, you have to pay the full self-employment tax, aka the FICA tax, which is Medicare, Social Security. You got to pay 15.3% on your net. Okay, you pay the whole thing now as the entrepreneur, right? So if it's 15.3% that I got to pay on my 100 grand, that means that I got to cut a check for $15,300 right off of my 100K, right? $15,300. That's a lot of money. Okay, it's a lot of money. Now, of course, you still made money. That's great. But now we got to start lowering. We got to start figuring out how to minimize our exposures. But you pay $15,300. Well, $15,300 on a monthly basis is $1,275 a month. If we were looking at it like having to write somebody a check every month, you're writing a check for $1,275 to the government, right? What could you be doing if that money was actually in flow? Like you kept that as cash flow to pay for advertising, marketing, and etc., right? But I got to write the check out for $15,300. Self-employment tax that I got to pay. Now, after I'm done paying self-employment tax, I'm not done there, right? Government got a lot of ways to be able to get into my pockets here. The next thing is federal and state taxes. Now, let's just take me for an example. On my personal tax return, right? On my tax return, let's say that my taxable income is $80,000 that's taxable income for that year. If my taxable income is 80 grand, let's just say I'm paying in total between federal and state. Oh, by the way, and I live in the city too, Philadelphia. I gotta pay city tax, local tax. Expensive. Now, on top of federal, state, let's say federal, state, local, I'm not even taking into account other type of taxes that are out there. Let's say it's around about 25% that I got to pay in tax on my taxable income. Well, if I'm paying 25% on my 80 grand of taxable income that I have, I got to push out another check for about $20,000, right? Now, that $20,000 is about $1,666 a month as another check that I got to write to the government on top of my self-employment tax that I got to pay, okay? So when we think about that now, my self-employment tax and my federal, state, local, and other taxes that could be out there that I got to pay. Now, ultimately, overall, for that year, I had to write the government a check for $36,000, roughly $36K, which comes out to be about $3,000 per month that I'm paying in taxes. I mean, I could think of a lot of ways that I could use the extra $3,000 to continue to grow my business, right? So when I think about that here, this is why when I say you're not saving any money when it comes to taxes on the LLC, you're literally not saving any money. In the next part of this video, I'm going to be talking about how you can save money by electing as an S-Corp, on how you can now save money on this piece right here. This is the part where people talk about, here's where you can save money on an S-Corp. They're talking about self-employment tax, which I'll be talking about in a second, self-employment tax. As an S-Corp, you can start to bypass some of those self-employment taxes to save yourself some money and keep it in your pocket. And that's what we'll be talking about here in this next step. All right, now we're down to the fun part. Let's break down an LLC that's taxed as a sole proprietorship, LLC taxed as an S-Corp, and really showing you the numbers from a tax standpoint, right? And then we'll get into when is it actually worth your time to be elected to be taxed as an S-Corp, because there is a breaking point of when it's worth your time, right? Because me as an entrepreneur, taxes, let's just take taxes away from this. There's a cost of time, right? As entrepreneurs, we have time that we need to make money, marketing, etc., right? And then on top of that, we're paying for attorneys, and we're paying for tax professionals or CPAs, or if we have to pay state fees for our S-Corp, then there's a certain amount of time that's involved to do all of these things, which means that it needs to be worth my time to save that money by electing to be taxed as an S-Corp, which we'll talk about in that next part after that. But let's break this down here of why an S-Corp can be an advantage to those that are netting a certain amount of money. So I'm going to compare both here. So you'll see LLC tax as an sole prop and the LLC tax as an S-Corp, and we're going to talk about both here. So again, we still got Prince Donnell LLC. Y'all know that Prince Donnell LLC, I do marketing, TikTok, YouTube, all types of stuff, right? And like I talked about in the last example, same example here, made $150,000 in revenue, right? $50,000 in expenses, I netted $100K. Now, my LLC is taxed as an S-Corp over here, same thing, $150,000 in revenue, $50,000 in expenses, and then I netted $100K. Same examples here on both sides, on both sides of the tax. Now remember, as an LLC taxed as a sole prop, remember, you're paying self-employment tax on the entire net of the 100K, okay? Self-employment tax, Medicare, Social Security, 15.3%. You're paying $15,300, a bill that you gotta pay to the government, right? And then remember, let's say that my taxable income, when that money passes through to my personal tax return, let's say that my taxable income is $80,000. Well, now when my taxable income is $80,000, I got to pay federal taxes, state taxes, local taxes. I'm here in Philadelphia, and there's other taxes that could be involved as well. So let's just assume that I'm paying about 25% between federal, state, local, and other tax. Then let's say it's 20 grand that I got to cut out to the government as well. Well, okay, that means total between self-employment tax and my federal, state, local, and other taxes, I'm paying about $36,000 for that year in taxes. That's about $3,000 a month, like we talked about in the last part of the video. That's a lot of money, okay? And I could think of like 50 different ways I could use this money right here, okay? So that's being taxed as sole proprietor. You're not getting any savings here on the sole proprietor side, no savings, right? But again, like I told you on the earlier part of the video, that's okay if you're just starting out and you may not be making a lot of profitability. Remember, this is on netting 100K. If you only netting 15, 20K, 30K, then slow your roll for a second, and I'll talk about that. You're still gearing yourself up, okay? Now, let's talk about the LLC tax as an S-Corp with the same example where I netted 100,000. Here's the difference with the S-Corp and where the tax savings comes into play that you've heard all over the internet. With that 100,000, now remember, on the sole prop side, I'm paying self-employment tax on the entire 100,000. Here's the difference with the S-Corp. The difference with the S-Corp is that I am able to control how this $100,000 is paid, okay? Now I have two ways that I can pay out this $100,000 in net income that my business made. The first way that I can pay it out is through a reasonable salary, and the second way I can pay that out is through a distribution. Let's talk about both, right? Now, I'm sure that y'all know that when you're an LLC as a sole proprietor, you're not paying a salary as an LLC that's sole prop. There's no salary involved, right? You just write yourself a check, but there's no payroll system for you as the actual business owner of the LLC or the sole prop. When you're taxed as an S-Corp, you actually become an employee now of the company, of your own company. You're an employee. You have to pay yourself a reasonable salary now, which I would suggest going to a payroll service in order to do that. Please do that. Because if you don't, and you just write yourself, now you're going to have other tax situations in the future. Go with a payroll service, run your salary through there so that they can already take the taxes and everything out, so you don't have no problems. You get yourself a W-2 at the end of the year. You want that, trust me. Don't be like me in the past where I learned from that mistake, okay? Now, you have to pay yourself a reasonable salary. What is a reasonable salary? Well, if you look up on the IRS rules, they have certain rules around what a reasonable salary is. It can be based upon expertise, how much money the business generates, the economy, where you're located. It's a lot of things that are involved in this, okay? When it comes to reasonable salary. That's why you want to talk to a legal or a financial professional to be able to discuss what a reasonable salary is based off your business. I'm just giving you an example here. Now, the example I'm going to give you is, I'm going to say out of this $100,000 in net, I want 50% of that to be paid out as a reasonable salary to me. So I'm going to take a salary of $50,000 and I'm going to have the other $50,000 being paid out as a distribution to me. The distribution is still going to come to me. I just wanted to be done differently. And I'll talk about why. The reason why is because on your reasonable salary of $50,000, you have to pay self-employment tax on that reasonable salary. Okay, so now that I'm only taking a salary of $50,000, my self-employment tax, that 15.3%, instead of it being $15,300 that I'm paying on the entire 100K, I'm now only paying $7,650 in self-employment tax because my salary is only $50,000. You get it? 50,000, 15.3%, $7,650 in self-employment tax instead of $15,300 because the entire 100 grand, I'm breaking it up into reasonable salary. Now, what happens to that other $50,000 in net? I'm paying it to me as a distribution. That's one of the advantages of having an S-Corp. You can pay a distribution to yourself. That distribution that you pay to yourself, there is no self-employment tax on the distribution. So now that there's no self-employment tax on the distribution, I'm getting the $50,000 bypassing that 15.3% in tax. I still have to pay, of course, the federal, the state, local, and etc. taxes on that $50,000. I'm bypassing that 15.3%, though. That becomes expensive to me over time as I start to make more money. So now, no self-employment tax on that other $50,000, $0 in SC tax. So now I only had to pay $7,650 because I distributed it out. Now, I know what you're probably saying to yourself. Well, Don, why don't if I can bypass the self-employment tax of the 15.3%, why don't I just pay out my entire amount as a distribution? I know you're probably thinking that as an entrepreneur because look, I would think the same thing. 15.3, I paid out as a distribution. Trust and believe me, the IRS keeps a very close eye on that. And that's why they say reasonable salary. Because if you start paying, if you try to abuse this rule, and out of this $100,000, you say, you know what, I'm only going to take a reasonable salary of $10,000 or 10% of this, and the other 90% is going to be a distribution, I can guarantee you're going to get flagged. Almost guarantee it. You don't abuse this here, right? So I say 50-50. There's others online that say 60-40, right? Some people, it depends. Talk to a professional, right? But you want to make sure that it's a reasonable salary. I'm going 50-50 and I'm being modest here, okay? Don't abuse this rule. They put this in place for a reason because they know people are going to try to bypass and pay out an entire distribution of themselves to bypass the 15.3% in tax, right? So that's the reason why, as an entrepreneur, don't try to do any funny business here, right? 50% goes reasonable, the other 50% goes distribution. Cool, I'm able to bypass. Now, if we talk about it from a savings perspective now, remember, between my $15,300 that I'm paying in self-employment tax on this entire 100K, plus that 25% that I'm paying in federal and state taxes, I'm paying about $36,000 over here as an LLC that's taxed as a sole prop. But now, since I'm an S-Corp, I'm only paying $7,650 in self-employment tax, and I'm bypassing the self-employment on that other $50,000. And I still got to pay my federal and state taxes, right? Which is still going to be $20,000 over here, same thing. But the difference is now, instead of me paying $36,000, I'm actually paying about $28,000 in taxes on this side. So now that I'm only paying $28,000 on this side, and I'm gonna write this down. Now that I'm only paying 28 on this side, instead of actually paying 36 on this side, now when we talk about that, I'm saving myself about $8,000 in total amount of taxes for the year, which comes out to be a bit of an advantage for me at that point. Now I know what you're probably saying now. Okay, well, Don, what's the break-even point for me to move from an LLC as a sole proprietor? What's the difference between me being, where's that breaking point to move from here to S-Corp? And now I want to break down the breaking point, because there are a few different breaking points here of when you should move, what your profit should look like. The main point of when you decide to move is based on what your profit looks like. And there's another factor that I want to talk about, which is your time. In conclusion now, when is it time to break out from an LLC that's taxed as a sole prop and to move into an S-Corp? What's that net profit that we want to get to in order to do that? Well, I gave two examples so we can show this, right? Now, let's say that you're watching this video right now and you're somebody that has a net profit of about $30,000, okay? Your net is about 30. So total, if you were to be paying self-employment tax because you were an LLC taxed as an S-Corp, your self-employment tax would be $4,590, right? If you were a sole prop as an LLC. But if you decide to move into an S-Corp and you were only netting $30,000, let's see how that would work out for you. Well, first things first, like we talked about in the last part of the video, we're just going to do a simple 50-50. 50% of that net profit goes towards reasonable salary. The other 50% goes out as a distribution. Well, okay, cool. If we do that, then that means my reasonable salary is $15,000. My distro is 15. Remember, I'm only paying self-employment tax on a reasonable salary. I'm bypassing the 15.3% self-employment tax on the distro. Okay, so now at this $15,000 that I'm being $15,000 I'm being taxed at 15.3%. Now that means that my total savings for my self-employment tax is only $2,295. So instead of me paying $4,590 as a sole proprietor, I'm saving now $2,295 by distributing the other $15,000 to me and bypassing self-employment tax, right? So I got a $2,295 savings by moving to S-Corp if I netted $30,000. That sounds great in theory, but now let's talk about that $2,295 savings that's supposed to go in your pocket, right? That $2,295 was supposed to go in your pocket, and it's supposed to be used for operations to be able to market and do different things, right? So it needs to be worth my time to move to an S-Corp. Well, at this $30,000, here's this $2,295 savings. Well, let's talk about it now. Let's say that I have state fees that I got to pay. If you have an S-Corp, you got to pay state fees depending on what state that you're in, depending on the price. If you're in the state of California, man, you got to pay like about $800 in state fees, right? So when we think about that now, let's say that your state fees are $500 to $800 to maintain this S-Corp every single year. Okay, that's one fee I got to pay. Let's say that I got to pay my attorney and my CPA. Well, if you got an S-Corp, I would always recommend paying your attorney or your CPA or tax professional, because guess what? You have to file the right type of tax returns. You got to make sure that your documents are up to date. Like, that's not a game here. So you need to put an attorney and a CPA or tax professional in this mix. Let's say it costs me a total of $2,000 in order to pay my attorneys, CPAs, and different things that I need to year to get this up and going. Because remember, time is most valuable to you. You're not an expert at this stuff, so I wouldn't suggest you to try to figure this out and then get in trouble at a later time. So you need these people. And then the most valuable, well, before we even talk about time, just between state fees and your attorney and your CPA, you've already done spent that entire savings just on this here. You already done spent it. So technically speaking, at a $30,000 net profit, you really didn't even get a savings because you just put the money back into somebody else's pocket. And on top of putting the money back into somebody else's pocket, now you also wasted a lot of your time too, as opposed to moving to an S-Corp. Instead of keeping it as an LLC, taxed as a sole prop, and kept it very, very simple, right? Had you kept it more simple, you would have had more time to make money. Now that you've added a little bit more complication and complexity to this now, since you're an S-Corp, now your time. So now not only did you not get the savings here, on top of that, you just wasted time, and time means money when you're an entrepreneur. Now you actually lost money by moving over to an S-Corp if you only netted 30,000. You really kind of almost lost money in a sense, or broke even, but there's no break even when your time is associated with that as an entrepreneur. There is no break even. My time is super valuable. Every minute that I'm thinking about my business instead of thinking about the craziness of an S-Corp and all the things that go on, man, I make more money, right? So at 30,000, it's it's not worth it. So if you're an entrepreneur that makes 30,000 in net or less, stop listening to the internet telling you to move over to an S-Corp, because you're going to get yourself into you're going to get entangled. And we don't want that to happen. Stick with your LLC right now. Focus on making money. Focus on having some net profit and growing your company. That's what I want you to focus on right now. And then make sure you still hire a tax professional that can go ahead and make sure your taxes are filed each and every year, gets you the proper deductions, all that good stuff. Yes, of course. But if you only netted 30K or less, then your business is not at the size yet to go S-Corp. That's fine. You're right where you need to be right now. Keep making money, keep netting some profitability, and keep growing from here, okay? Now, for my people that are now doing 50,000 plus in net profit, 50K plus, I'm going to use 60K as an example, but if you're doing about 50K net or more, then that's when S-Corp may start being a conversation for you to say, you know what? Is it worth my time? Is it worth the savings to move into an S-Corp, my LLC being taxed as an S-Corp? Is it worth my time now? Let's talk about that. So I netted 60K. Now remember, at 60,000, if I was just an LLC that was being taxed as a sole proprietor, at that 60,000, I would have paid $9,180 in self-employment tax if I was a sole proprietor for my LLC. Well, now, if I have my LLC being taxed as an S-Corp, okay, great. I'm going to do the same thing now. 50% of that net is going to go towards my reasonable salary. The other 50% goes towards distribution, where I get a K1 at the end of the year. Okay, great. My reasonable salary is $30,000. I'm only paying 15.3% self-employment tax on the reasonable salary. I'm bypassing the 15.3 on the other $30,000, right, that I'm getting. Cool. That means that I have now a $4,590 tax savings now. $4,590 tax saving, right? Net savings. Well, now remember, on the same side, we're talking about state fees. We're talking about attorney, CPA, your time that's associated. Well, if I'm paying about $500 to $800 in state fees, and I pay about $2,000 to my CPA, let's just say in total I'm paying about $2,500 out. Well, if I'm putting $2,500 out, now you're talking about another $2,000 that's there in the savings after I'm done paying out. Well, now it may start being worth my time at that point if I got an extra $2,000 in my pocket now, which comes out to be, let's say, an extra $180 to $200 a month. That extra $180, $200 a month that I got now, I can put that towards my marketing. I could put that towards Facebook ads. I could put that towards a lot of different things. Over here, I'm not getting anything. I'm wasting my time. Over here, I'm actually getting a net savings now after I'm done hiring the proper professionals and paying my state fees, right? So that's the reason why 30K is not really for me. This is just me. It's not a breaking point for you at 30K. Once you start hitting 50, 60K, that breaking point becomes now, it becomes better at that point. It becomes worth your time. And not to mention, if you did 60K on the net, odds are you're going to continue to grow each and every year from that point. So maybe next year, 70, 80. And as you begin to make more net, now at that point, you'll start to see more savings. And it becomes even more of your time more savings now, which now you can put into your pocket. That's ultimately the goal. So the entire point of this video here is that as an entrepreneur, you have to make the right decisions for your business, okay? You got to make the right decisions. Don't take my word for it. Again, don't take my word. I'm giving you just my experience, and with having a tax franchise and having a lot of tax professionals that are around me every single day, CPAs and etc. And even with my experience, you got to do what's best for you, and you got to make sure you get the right people on your team that are going to give you the right information. Please Do not go on Instagram, do not go on YouTube and just say, hey, this guy, John, said get an S-Corp because it saves money on taxes. And John he doesn't even understand your business. He don't know how much profit that you make. He don't know where you currently are in your business. He don't know your responsibility level, your organization level. If he or she don't know none of that, you shouldn't be taking advice from that person. Sit down with somebody first that's going to understand the business, understand your numbers, and crunch them to figure out if it's worth your time. And I'll say this one more time to end out this video. It's not just about the savings. It's about your time as an entrepreneur. I value your time. I value my own time. And even if there was a savings, if my time is calculated into it and it's costing me more time-wise as opposed to actual money in my pocket, I would never do it. I'd rather just pay the bill and keep my sanity and my time, right? That's the goal, because time makes money, okay? So that's the difference between LLC versus S-Corp. When you should, LLC versus S-Corp, reasonable salary versus distribution when moving to S-Corp, and when is the breaking point of moving into an S-Corp. And I hope that you have a profitable year. I hope that you generate revenue. I hope that you grow and expand so that one day in the future, you can indeed move over to an S-Corp. And even then, if you need your taxes done, you could come to Jumping Jack Tax and we can assist you with that, right? But to end this out, as an entrepreneur, I just want to say congratulations to you for moving into business, or if you haven't gone into business yet, congratulations in advance. And I hope this video helps you. Right? I hope it helps you to have a clearer mindset around it, and I hope that you got a value system set in place to make sure that you're getting your information from the right places and that you're not just acting on decisions without understanding what you're doing. Entrepreneurship is hard. You have to be responsible. You have to be organized. There's a lot of bills. There's chargebacks. There's payroll. There's taxes. There's emergencies. There's everything involved, and you got to make sure you keep your head on the swivel, but people that are professionals can help you, right? So make sure that you do that. Guys, this is LLC versus S-Corp. What's the difference? Does it save you any money in taxes? Please like, comment, subscribe, post this on Instagram, Twitter, and have other people watch it, other business owners, aspiring entrepreneurs. And I hope I was able to help you. See you next video. Peace.